No once upon a time, it was a dark and stormy night, but it was all a dream. The end. No, it is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. Or perhaps slightly less famously, it is a truth universally recognized that a zombie in possession of brains must be in want of more brains. A world without stories. No silver screen, no flat screen telly, no box sets, no Netflix, no binge watch till I can't move. It's almost impossible to imagine, isn't it? And that's because we are all taught how to understand, interpret, appreciate, and tell stories, aka English literature. Put your hand up if you had an English teacher at school. Okay? Keep your hand up if they inspired you. Wave your hand in the air if you never told them. Humble English teacher, unsung hero. In her memoir, Once in a House on Fire, Andrea Ashworth writes of two teachers, one through whom she became enchanted by the memorable bits of literature that buoyed her while circumstances were sinking, and another who radiated a crucial sense of possibility and cast a benign, probably life-saving spell on her life. That life-saving spell is far from unique. This talk is a call to action to all those studying English, teaching English, thinking about teaching it, or who know of anyone who might be interested in this most beautiful and important of subjects. In recent times, I have seen the core subjects that I've dedicated my life to become endangered. Students aren't taking English. Students at GCSE are finding it boring. They're finding stories boring. English in schools has been described as a joyless slog, and that's just by the teachers. Students are not selecting it at A-level, not choosing to study it at university. We need to do something. Stories are central to what make us human. They are crucial for the skills of connection, communication, and compassion. In a nutshell, stories help us understand ourselves and each other. When I was growing up in a small town, I didn't know anything about the world, but I read, I watched, I listened to stories about the lives of others. And they gave me a tiny glimmer of understanding, a glimpse, a minute crack of empathy opening in my mind to let the light in on differences so they couldn't sit in the darkness of ignorance. And stories aren't just what's written down in words. Maps can tell a story. Drawings too, drama, dance, movement, meditation can all tell stories. We all have at least one important story inside of us that really should be told. Chester Retold is an alternative way to teach English. This is an ident that was drawn by Simon Grennan, one of the tutors on the module. Simon has tried to capture the spirit of inclusivity through the people, as well as bringing together Chester old and new with the buildings. Chester Retold literally brings students and members of the Chester community together to create links and better understanding between these two groups. Bell Hooks says it is those teachers who transgress traditional boundaries who have the most potential to inspire. And Chester Retold crosses boundaries in every sense: what happens in its classroom, who is welcome there, and where that classroom is even situated. Remember, anywhere can be a classroom, anything a lesson. This picture was taken last year in the mirrors outside Story House. You can just about make out me in the middle, and those around me are all my students on the course. Chester Retold teaches English, teaches stories using compassion. It offers English undergraduates at the University of Chester the opportunity to learn about storytelling alongside participants from the community of Chester. Over the past 2 years, my undergraduates have learnt from and beside community students from Fallen Angels Dance Theatre, a charity helping people recover from addiction and mental health problems through movement and dance. And they have also engaged with Live Cheshire, who work to include young people with physical and/or learning disabilities, some of whom were in the earlier photo taken outside Storyhouse. I took this picture at Live Cheshire's base at New Scene, Chester. It reads, "Life isn't about waiting for the storm to be over. It's about learning to dance in the rain." A statement to live by, and a statement that also encapsulates the mood of optimism on the course, as well as the possibility of doing something creative with negativity. The Chester Retold model boosts engagement through placing the facilitation of belonging, acceptance, and inclusion at its core. And its techniques are also really quirky, achieving engagement through inclusion. This is the beginning of our walk around the city walls. I took pictures of the students and the people that we met along the way. It was a very mindful activity, and we were encouraged to experience it through all of our different senses, especially if we'd done the walk many times before. The walk led to a discussion about homelessness, and then later a story about it too via this map. We drew where we walked figuratively and noted what we saw, felt, or sensed at different points along the way. This is an example of how a map can tell a story. And there were other edge-of-the-seat activities too, including a flash mob set to Johnny Be Good in the Storyhouse foyer, because Chester Retold is very much a course about learning by doing. Learning by doing is really powerful. This is us, students and staff, engaging with a memory line inspired by the poet Lem Sissay. It's a washing line with lots of different memory prompts on it. Learning by doing begins with connection. I'd like us to try it now, so bear with me. If you are able to stand, I would like you to stand up now. If you're not able to stand, remain seated. Okay, thank you. Whether you are seated or standing, I would now like you to high-five the person next to you. Go on, we're all in it together. Do it again, maybe the person on the other side now. And again, I would like you to feel in your body. Keep high-fiving, come on. Okay, excellent, excellent. A-star, you can sit down now. As well as demonstrable mental health benefits, the course also achieves excellent academic results and outstanding student feedback. For example, students have said, "It has been the most enjoyable module at university so far. This module is a breath of fresh air in terms of assessment. I've learned that I can take my experiences, even negatives, and do something expressive and beautiful and positive with them." And from the community students, the best thing was interacting with fabulous young hearts and brains, a renewed sense of the enjoyment and fulfillment of learning. The people were probably the best thing. The students were bright and lively. It was a joy. The connection is real. The compassion, genuine. To demonstrate, I'm going to read a piece one of my students, Neve Ryan, a talented poet, wrote for a community student from Live Cheshire. It's called Pink. It was a fast introduction. She grinned and I said hello. I asked if what she was drawing was a pig, a flower, bubblegum, a butterfly, a flamingo, a bow, a pen, a hat, a scarf, a jumper, a teddy bear, or a lollipop. But she just answered, pink. I learnt very quickly that that was all that mattered. Chester Retold is without doubt the most challenging and daring teaching I have ever undertaken, and I am not one to stay in my comfort zone. This is a scent exercise taking place in a corridor. There is rosemary and orange blossom and lavender and lilac. And some students were exploring these smells and the memories that they triggered, while others were engaging with the memory line in a room nearby. This is another example of how mindfulness was embedded on the module. Partly as a result of the challenges encountered, Chester Retold is also the most valuable and important teaching I've ever delivered, and the teaching of which I am most proud. This is the undergraduates working together with participants from Live on their own sent stories in the Storyhouse boardroom. Neve is here, and her fellow students in pink. Recognizing the extent of the barriers faced by the young people from Live Cheshire in particular was extremely challenging, both personally and professionally. Working out how to include people with an extremely wide range of needs in a genuinely inclusive way has made me and my colleagues think much more broadly about people's bodies and minds. It is only by doing this work that exclusions from higher education can really be challenged. It is only by working at the very edge of what is possible in higher education that higher education can really grow. This is another community student, Mike Noakes, who actually submitted written work while on the module and gained a high 2-1 mark. It is entirely up to community students whether or not they complete an assignment, but the option is always there. I feel much of Chester Retold has not been delivered to my students, but co-delivered by them. For example, this is a storyboard we drew together, a different person drawing each square. This is the story we told. A woman who wishes 1872 would hurry along discovers she can time travel and ends up in 1972, where she meets the love of her life. Appropriately, we concluded, love really is timeless. As Yeats has pointed out, education is merely the lighting of a fire. Once that first spark is ignited in a person, there is no knowing where that internal energy will and can take them. And your work as a teacher is done. Here we all are in the Storyhouse green room, where the actors relax, and that on the screen at the back is the stage. There is nothing more powerful that you can give people than prompting them to find inspiration, motivation, and drive in themselves. English can do that. The biggest lesson I have learned through working with marginalized groups is that the stigma is often much greater than the perceived challenge, meaning that it is the stigma, the thought that it cannot work, that actually prevents inclusion, rather than the difficulties themselves. We must stop falling student numbers. This talk is a call to action to all those studying English, teaching English, thinking about teaching it, or who know of anyone who might be interested in this most beautiful and important of subjects. We can stop falling student numbers. One way is to reinvigorate English by involving local communities and shaping our teaching around reflection, understanding, and compassion for others when these skills are needed more than ever. Benjamin Franklin famously remarked, "Tell me, and I forget. Teach me, and I may remember. Involve me, and I learn." As English teachers, in terms of our curriculum, our local communities, and the very survival of our subject, we must now involve to evolve.